Welcome to DevOps Corner. It's 2 a.m. The pager screams. Your application is down. You jump to your terminal, your heart is pounding, and you start checking the dashboards. CPU looks fine. Memory, green across the board. Network traffic, totally normal. Every single metric is telling you that things are okay, but you know they're not. The application is down, and you're just staring into this abyss of abstraction, completely lost, wondering where on earth the failure is actually hiding. All right, I'm just going to say it. Most teams using Kubernetes today absolutely should not be. Now, I know that goes against everything you've probably heard for the past 5 years. Kubernetes is the king, right? It's the standard. It won the container wars. And yet, I'm telling you, for a huge number of teams, especially if you're building on AWS, adopting it is a premature and, frankly, an incredibly expensive mistake. And look, that's a fair question. You're probably thinking, dude, if it's the industry standard, it has to be the right choice, right? Well, here's the fundamental problem. Kubernetes was never, ever designed to be simple. It was built by Google to solve Google-scale problems, running infrastructure all over the planet. It's a brilliant solution for problems that, let's be honest, most of us just don't have. And in the process, it creates a whole new universe of complexity that we are just not ready to handle. We've been so obsessed with adopting the standard that we completely forgot to ask the most important question. What problem are we actually trying to solve? So to really understand where things go so wrong, let's first look at the path of least resistance on AWS. The same, simple default, Amazon Elastic Container Service, or ECS. And no, this is not some forgotten second-tier tool. It's AWS's own powerful, opinionated solution for running containers. In fact, AWS themselves say that over 65% of their new container customers start right here with ECS. And there's a really, really good reason for that. It was built from day one to feel like it just belongs in AWS. I mean, just look at how straightforward this is. To get your container running on ECS, first you define a task. Just think of it as a simple blueprint for your application. Then you create a service. All that does is tell ECS, hey, run and maintain a few copies of my task. And that's basically it. Seriously. The real magic is that third step, the one you don't even have to do. AWS manages the entire control plane, the brain of the whole system, behind the scenes. You don't see it, you don't patch it, and you don't upgrade it. And get this, they do it completely for free. So here's the big takeaway. ECS is the default because it's the most direct, frictionless path to getting things done on AWS. It just works with everything you're already using, your IAM roles for security, your VPC for networking, your load balancers, it all just clicks together. The API is way simpler, which means your team gets up to speed in days, not months. And because you aren't paying for or managing that complex control plane, your total cost of ownership is way, way lower. It's the pragmatic, efficient, get-it-done choice. And this right here, is the fork in the road. This is where so many smart engineering teams take a massive wrong turn. They start out on ECS, everything's working great, the app is scaling just fine, but then the pressure starts to build. You hear it in meetings. We should really be using Kubernetes, or you see it on job descriptions. It becomes about resume-driven development. But notice what's missing. They don't actually have a problem that ECS isn't solving, they just feel like they should be using Kubernetes, and so they make the switch, not for a real technical reason, but because of hype. And they unknowingly sign their on-call engineers up for a world of pain. So, okay, let's talk about that world. Let's talk about Amazon Elastic Kubernetes Service, EKS. This is not an AWS-built orchestrator. This is AWS offering to run the complex open-source Kubernetes platform for you. And that's a really different philosophy. You're not using a simple integrated native tool anymore. You are choosing to adopt an external standard, a whole different ecosystem, and bring all of its power and all of its baggage right into your AWS account.
And this is the immediate result. Look at the shift in responsibility. On the left with ECS, your job is simple. You manage your application. That's it. On the right with EKS, well, sure, AWS manages the Kubernetes control plane for you and charges you about $72 a month for the privilege, but now you are on the hook for everything else. Suddenly, you're in charge of patching worker nodes. You're responsible for the relentless Kubernetes version upgrades. You have to research, install, and maintain an entire ecosystem of add-ons just to get basic functionality. You have to wrestle with complex networking plugins and confusing IAM roles. Your to-do list just exploded.
This is what I call the hidden tax of Kubernetes. It's the price you pay every single day. First, you've got the upgrade treadmill. Kubernetes releases new versions constantly, and you have to keep up or you fall out of support. It's a nonstop cycle of work. Then there's what I like to call add-on compatibility hell. You finally finish a painful Kubernetes upgrade and boom, your ingress controller breaks or your monitoring agent stops working. And now you're not just debugging your app, you're debugging your entire platform, which brings us right back to that 2 a.m. outage. When things go wrong in Kubernetes, you're not just debugging your code. You're debugging your code inside a container, inside a pod, scheduled on a node, connected by a network plugin, behind a service, exposed by an ingress. It's an absolute nightmare of abstraction layers. That is the Kubernetes tax. By the way, if this deep dive into the real-world trade-offs is already saving you from a future of over-engineering your stack, do me a favor and hit that like button. It really helps the channel and tells me to make more breakdowns just like this one. And I mean, this chart really says it all, doesn't it? The choice you're making isn't really about features on a list. It's about how much operational pain and complexity your team is willing to absorb. With ECS, that burden is designed to be minimal. With EKS, you are explicitly, whether you realize it or not, choosing to take on a massive, ongoing operational workload. That is the fundamental trade-off.
Now, I know what the Kubernetes advocates are thinking right now. They're screaming, but what about portability? The idea that you can just pick up your application and run it anywhere, on another cloud, on-premise, wherever. And yes, that's true. But here is the second place most teams get this wrong. They treat portability like a feature they might need someday, instead of what it really is, a very expensive, very high-level business strategy. You pay that Kubernetes tax every single day whether you actually use that portability or not, so you better be damn sure you actually need it.
Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that tax is never worth paying. There are absolutely valid strategic reasons to choose EKS. If your company has a clear board-level mandate to be multi-cloud, then yeah, Kubernetes is the common language you need. If your application absolutely requires a specific tool from the Kubernetes ecosystem, like a service mesh like Istio, then EKS is your way in. If your entire hiring strategy revolves around finding engineers with a portable, cloud-agnostic skill set, it makes sense. Or maybe you're just a super sophisticated team that genuinely needs the low-level control that ECS hides from you. But look at this list. These are not technical nice-to-haves. These are major, high-level business drivers.
And that brings us to what might be the single most important takeaway from all of this. The decision between ECS and EKS is almost never a technical one. It's an organizational and a strategic one. This isn't about which one can run a container better. They both do a great job at that. This is about what your organization is actually trying to achieve. Is your goal to ship product on AWS as fast and as cheaply as possible? Or is your goal to build a portable, cloud-agnostic platform, knowing full well it's going to cost you way more time, money, and expertise? So let's make this super practical. Here's a simple framework you can take to your next planning meeting. If you're a startup or you're launching a brand new project, it's ECS, full stop. Don't even debate it. Your priority is speed and low overhead. You need to ship, not build platforms. If you're an established company scaling an app that's already deep in the AWS world, it's probably still ECS. Why would you introduce a foreign abstraction layer when you can just leverage the native integration and save money? But if you're a huge enterprise with that multi-cloud mandate from the top, then okay, EKS becomes the logical path to portability. And finally, if you have genuinely complex networking needs that require something like a service mesh, you'll need EKS to get access to that ecosystem. See? It's about strategic logic. So I want to leave you with one final question. This is the question that cuts through all the hype, all the noise. Before you or your team jumps on the Kubernetes bandwagon, you have to be able to answer this with crystal clarity. What specific, painful problem do we have right now that ECS cannot solve for us? And is that problem so important that it justifies taking on the massive operational cost and complexity of Kubernetes? If you don't have a crisp, compelling answer to that question, you are over-engineering. It's that simple. The big takeaway is this: don't default to complexity. Start with the powerful simplicity of Amazon ECS. It will take you incredibly far, and for most applications, it is all you will ever need. You should only adopt the complexity of EKS when you have a clear, defined, strategic business reason that makes paying that hidden tax actually worth it. Choosing the simpler path isn't a compromise. For most teams, it's just the smartest engineering decision you can make. If this breakdown helped you think more critically about your own architecture, make sure to subscribe, because in our next explainer, we're diving deep into the 3 biggest cost-saving mistakes that teams make with AWS Lambda. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss that one. Thanks for watching.